Welcome to today's bonus episode of Travels by Broomstick. Unfortunately, Mr. Broomstick has been struck down with what can only be described as the bubonic plague, or man flu. Aren't they both the same? Anyway, it's quite fitting as today's journey takes us to the village of Eyam, the plague village in the Derbyshire Dales, in the Peak District National Park in England, UK. But before we explore the stories of self-sacrifice that occurred during the 1665 and 1666 plague of Eyam, I thought that we could look at the most iconic image of the plague doctor. This sinister-looking womble, this beaked bird-like creature, is called the plague doctor, a physician who treated people who were suffering from the bubonic plague during the epidemic in the 16th and 17th centuries. The costume or uniform worn by the plague doctor was said to have been originally created by Charles de Lomé, the royal physician serving King Louis XIII during the 1619 plague outbreak in Paris. The attire consisting of an ankle-length overcoat, gloves, hat, boots, and of course the beaked bird-like mask. Although it is said that the exact origins of the plague doctor mask are unclear, with reports dating back to 1373 in Italy and France. The clothing and mask combo is said to have inspired the costumes in Italian theatre. As a symbol of death and horror, although some historians believe this to be the other way around, saying that the plague doctor was fictional and inspired the real-life doctors. A typical plague doctor mask had glass openings for the eyes and a curved leather beak, like a bird's. It had straps that held the beak in place, covering the doctor's nose. The mask had two very small nose holes and acted like a type of respirator, made to protect the wearer from inhaling the deadly disease. The beak was stuffed with aromatic herbs such as lavender and mint, and dried flowers such as roses and carnations. It may have also contained dried juniper berries, cloves, myrrh, or a vinegar-soaked sponge. These would keep the stench of the decaying corpses away to prevent the plague doctors from becoming infected, as at this time they believed that the Black Death was caused by a miasma. A miasma, the Greek word for pollution, is a noxious form of bad air, also known as night air, believing that the miasma emanated from rotting organic matter, including rotting flesh. The wide-brimmed leather hat indicated their profession and covered their head, often keeping the mask secure. The long coat, gloves and boots were all waxed and protected the wearer against blood spatter, cough droplets, lymph pustules, sweat and vomit. It also stopped the fleas which transmitted the plague from getting at the doctor's skin. The stick was used to point out areas of the patient's body that needed attention. It was used to examine the patient without touching them, and could be used to remove clothing and even stop someone from getting too close.
Get away from me, boy. Get away. Stay back. Stay back.
Anyone else getting supermarket toilet roll COVID flashbacks? The plague doctors had mixed reputations. Some people saw them as a warning to leave the area as death was near. The plague doctors were often not experienced and trained physicians. They rarely cured patients, and instead served to record death tolls and record the number of infected individuals for demographic purposes.
Bring out your dead!
To try and cure the plague victims, they practiced bloodletting, the surgical removal of some of the patient's blood believed to rid the body of impure fluids to cure illness and disease. Bloodletting could be performed by the plague doctor himself or by leeches. Other remedies included placing frogs and chickens on the infected buboes, the swollen lymph nodes in the person's underarm, neck, or groin. One doctor even had a large dog lay upon their patient's chest as a form of a cure. These peculiar treatments were used to rebalance the humours, a system of medicine detailing the makeup and workings of the human body. There were 4 humours, the vital bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And if there was an excess or deficiency of one or more of these humours in the body, then this was a sign of illness. Although I'm not too sure how rubbing Kermit the Frog in your groin would help cure you from the Black Death.
Hi-ho, Kermit the Frog here.
More research is needed, methinks. In some European cities, plague doctors were requested to do autopsies to determine the cause of death and how the plague affected the individual. Plague doctors were employed by the city authorities and served both the rich and the poor, but no amount of money could save them from the fate that would befall them. One of the most famous plague doctors was none other than Nostradamus, the French astrologer, apothecary, physician, and oracle of prophetic predictions. Nostradamus didn't believe in bloodletting practices and instead practiced effective hygiene. He was quite ahead of his time. He prescribed his patients plenty of clean, fresh drinking water, fresh air, and administered a low-fat diet. Nostradamus created a rose pill, which is a lozenge made from rose hips which contained vitamin C that apparently did help the plague victims. He also encouraged the removal of infected corpses from the city, further improving hygiene. The plague doctor has become an iconic symbol. The costume is popular for Halloween, and after the COVID pandemic, it saw an increase in popularity. So how many brooms do I give the plague doctor? 5 brooms for this creepy Beaky. Join us next week when we'll be doing the full episode of the Eyam Plague Village.